Hi, everyone, and welcome back to week 3 of the podcast. Today, we have 3 people for week 3. Wow, we planned this so well, guys. So today we have myself, and we also have Jared. Say hi, Jared.
Hey, everybody.
And we also have Josh.
Hey, everybody.
So we have the 3 of us this week because, in case you didn't know, we're splitting up our teaching content this month. So high schoolers have their own content videos, and junior highs have their own videos. And last night, Jared spoke to the junior highs and Josh spoke to the high schoolers. So before we get too far into things, why don't you guys just give us a quick little summary of what you talked about last night? So maybe Jared, do you want to go first?
Yeah, for sure. So I spoke to the junior highs, as Hannah just said. And this week we spoke about sexual integrity. Just talking about how we all have attractions and desires. And what we're focusing in on is, though those things may feel awkward to talk about, they're not necessarily bad things. Mm-hmm. It's important to know how to respond to those attractions and desires. So we talked about how Christ calls us to have a renewed mind. Paul talks about it in Romans 12. And so, just talking about how Christ calls us to live with sexual integrity, not just as the world seems fit, but based off of how to honor God, others, and ourselves. That's really what we talked about.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. I wish I could have heard it. I only got to hear the high school video because obviously I can't listen to two at the same time. I tried being in both chats and that was not going well for me. But that sounds like it would have been a great message. I'll maybe have to listen to it later.
Yeah, you've got all weekend to listen to it, Hannah. You're good to go.
Yes, so true. Okay, Josh, do you want to share what you talked about?
Yeah, so like Hannah said, I kicked off the More to the Story teaching series for our high schoolers last night. And every week we'll have this kind of like tagline. And, so when it comes to God's plan for sex, there's more to the story. That was our tagline for this week. And so we started off talking about like movies and movie trailers and how in movie trailers you're just kind of getting this taste for the movie, right? Like you see oftentimes like the best parts of what the movie is. And then sometimes you're either missing a lot of great parts to the rest of the movie or the rest of the story, but sometimes you're missing like some bad stuff, right? And so it's talking about how there's more to the story than what we read about in online and what we see online and that type of thing. The conversations we have, there's so much more that God intended. And then it gets into this kind of talk of, how some things are best for, we need to figure out what's best for us, right? And then we need to figure out what's best for others. I really liked this one because growing up in the church, we didn't often talk about thinking about the other when we were thinking about, like Jared said, sexual integrity and sexual desires. We often just talked about like what's best for us and what we can and can't do, right? At the end of the message, I talk about how like a lot of people are just wanting us in the church as youth pastors to tell people where the line is and tell them not how to cross it, right? Or how to not cross it. And this is more about like understanding what's best for us, but also just as importantly, what's best for others and making sure that we're, respecting others as much as we're respecting ourselves, right? So yeah, it's great teaching. Yeah. If I do say so myself, I guess. Yeah, we're using. This is where I should say we decided to use a specific curriculum for both of these series. So we brought in it's called Orange Curriculum, and the reason that's important is because we wanted to we loved what they had to say, and then we wanted to make sure we were staying above board so that everyone knew what we'd be talking about ahead of time. And so it's great. It really is great stuff. And so it was a great week of teaching.
Josh is basically saying he's not tooting his own horn when he says it's great content.
That's what I'm trying to say.
That's what he's trying to say is we are borrowing this content because we think it is a great and super important to be talking about. So
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, it was funny because in my small group last night, one of my girls said that you made some great points or something. Like they were like, Josh's sermon was so great, and I was like, it wasn't Josh's sermon, but I'll tell him you said that. No, but it was good. Yeah, it's going to be a great month. We have some really, really good topics and conversations that we're going to get into, so I'm excited.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so next, I guess I have a question for you guys. So
Okay.
this is the kind of topics that we're talking about this month can sometimes, I guess, be a bit awkward or sometimes like a bit of a taboo topic. People don't want to talk about it. Yeah, see what I did there? Yeah, great.
This podcast is in partnership with Sunday Mornings Junior High. If you are a junior high listening to this, we invite you and we welcome you to join us at 9:30 on Zoom for church. We hope to see you guys all there.
So, question, because obviously we're talking about these things, why do you two think that it's important that we address these things in like a youth group context or in the church's context? Why do we need to be talking about this?
So it'll be interesting to kind of hear our perspectives on this because we are from different, I guess, technically different generations. And for me, there's a lot of hurt that people who've grown up in the church, when they're talking about what the church taught about sex or what they didn't teach about sex, there's a lot of hurt that comes from that. I know Bree and I have conversations all the time about how, we can't necessarily blame our parents or the churches we grew up in because they weren't equipped to have these conversations. And I think we've realized over the last number of years how important it is to have these conversations because of the conversations that are happening all over the place in everywhere in our lives. These conversations are happening, right? I think it was at the beginning of my teaching. I talk about like why is it not okay to talk about this in the church? We talk about it everywhere else. It's on every Netflix shows these days. It's on TikTok. It's everywhere. These conversations about love, dating, relationships. And so why do we feel like we can't talk about these things in the church, right? We need to come at these things just like in so many other areas of our lives. We need to come at it from a more godly perspective, right? A more Christ-centered perspective. And so I'd say that that's the main reason. It's a conversation that's happening, whether or not we like it, right? As a young parent, sorry, I'm ranting now. As a young parent, right? Like we've got young kids, and I talk to parents who are in the same demographic, and we think like, man, this is going to be hard to do. Like, are we prepared and equipped to have these conversations when they get older? And it's like, they seem really innocent, and they are, but eventually, if we're not the ones having conversations with them and the church isn't having conversations with, us, then culture is going to have those conversations. And it might not be what we want to teach our kids because it might not be the most Christ-centered and godly perspective.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. We were talking about this in my small group last night, actually, about how it's important to have these conversations in safe places. Because if you're not getting information from good and positive sources, then it's not that you're going to not get information because we talk about it and hear about it everywhere else. So if you're not getting your information from good sources or having healthy conversations, you're going to get it from bad sources, and then you're going to have bad information, or you're going to make wrong decisions. And it's just like, it's better to have these conversations come from a safe and a healthy place.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And to build off that was the third point in our action steps with the Awkward series with the junior highs last night was talking in a positive manner about this. Like, and I'm going to jump into why I think it's important that we're having this conversation now. Is because I'm experiencing this right now. I'm in a relationship, and Josh and I have had these conversations. Other people growing up in church will have these conversations, asking the question, well, now I'm in a relationship. Am I allowed to do this? Am I allowed to do that? And Josh mentioned this before, that youth pastors used to be just, we want you to draw a line, and we want you to tell our kids whether not to cross this line, or where the line is really. And it's not as simple as that, right? And people at school will tell them where the line is. People at school will tell them there's no line. Sorry, I just went on a tangent. I kind of forgot where I was. But why I think it's important is just like everything else. God calls us to honor Him and serve Him. And so why in this area should we make it a taboo topic?
Yeah.
Imagine we never talked about serving others, right? The people would not know how to serve.
Mm-hmm.
And so I remember where my brain was going before. When people get into these situations, when they get into relationships, when these students grow up, they're getting into relationships now, even in grade 8. I remember I had my first crush in grade 4 or younger. So I was having these attractions and sexual desires with people in my class even, and I didn't know what to do. And so, and up until now, I'm in a relationship right now, and I'm still asking the questions. So it's like, how can we develop and teach and enter into these conversations with these students at an early stage so that we can, guide them, help them understand, make it a healthy thing to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
great,
and I love
Jared.
the point that both of you kind of touched on a little bit too about how it can be very easy to make it a conversation about drawing a line and not going beyond the line, but then people get very stuck on that. Like, where is the line?
Yeah.
What's crossing the line and what's not? And then it gets very, like, legalistic kind of.
Yeah.
Whereas if you learn more about why and how God created things and like that, like the more of the why and the story, more of the story. Wow, I'm just on top of this. But if you learn kind of that background, then it helps you to make those healthy decisions for yourself instead of just being like, I cannot cross this line, you know?
Yeah.
So...
Yeah,
Yeah.
we need to raise a generation of students and be a generation of leaders to students who teach thinking, right? And like that, going back to Jared's talk, like integrity, right? If we become people of integrity, then, this is not going to be that hard for us, right? So.
And to define integrity, because we spoke about this yesterday for those listening, integrity is just choosing to do the right thing, whether people are watching or not. It's respecting others, yourself, and God. It's holding yourself to a standard, whether people are watching or not.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, great thoughts. Wow. This is going to be such a good month. I'm so excited.
Yeah. Next week we've got, so I'm going to be doing the Awkward series, and Maddie Eckert's coming to do the high school series, more to the story. It's going to be another great week, and we're going to have another great podcast next week.
Woo!
Woo!
Yeah, so thanks for tuning in, everyone. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you kind of enjoyed getting a little bit behind the scenes of why we're talking about what we're talking about this month. And yeah, make sure to tune in next week. It'll air Friday at noon-ish. Just like
Noon-ish.
it did this week. All right, we'll see y'all next week. Bye.
Bye.